I'm Sydney Yeager, and I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the museum. And I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's inaugural New York Jewish Book Festival. This event is on Zabars, a family story with Julia Moskin and 3 generations of Zabars, including Henry Mariscal and Stanley, Judy, and David Zabar. We hope you will explore the 32 events that are happening throughout the museum today, meet some of the 85 speakers, and get books signed at one of the 72 author signings in our main lobby and events hall on the 2nd floor. While you are here, we also encourage you to take the time to visit our exhibitions, The Holocaust, What Hate Can Do, on the main level, and Survivors' Faces of Life After the Holocaust, photographs by Martin Scholler, on the 3rd floor. Andy Goldsworthy's Garden of Stones is also worth a visit, just outside of our wonderful cafe Locks. So the whole museum is open to you today. You can also pick up holiday gifts and books at the Pickman Museum shop and visitor services on the main level. We are encouraging people to wear masks in the museum, and we hope you will share feedback with us in our post-festival survey, which will be in your inboxes tomorrow. This program is made possible in part by support from the Battery Park City Authority. Your donations also help us present these programs. And now I'm so excited to introduce you to our speakers. Julia Moskin, who wrote the foreword to Zabars, A Family Story with Recipes, is a lifelong New Yorker, has been a New York Times food staff reporter since 2004. She grew up and still lives within 10 blocks of Zabars. In 2017, she was on the She Said team of reporters who won the Pulitzer Prize, uncovering sexual harassment at restaurants owned by Mario Batali, Ken Friedman, and April Bloomfield. She reports on food news, startling readers with the fact that most sushi is frozen, not fresh, writes profiles and spots trends like ramen, funfetti, and Korean fried chicken, which she wrote about before any U.S. journalist. Her 2020 investigation into sexual coercion at the prestigious Court of Masters Sommeliers led to the resignation of its entire board, as did her 2004 investigation into financial corruption at the James Beard Foundation. We are also joined by Henry Mariscal, Stanley, Judy, and David Zabar. Zabar's A Family Story with Recipes is available for purchase at our Pickman Museum shop and lobby. So now please welcome Julia, Henry, Stanley, Judy, and David.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this increasingly gray day. I'm going to go ahead and assume everyone in this room has been to Zabars. I was lucky enough to grow up nearby in the era where there was still sawdust on the floor and salami hanging from the ceiling, and it's certainly not an accident that I became a food writer, since Zabars was my favorite place in the world. So when Lori Zabar called to ask me to do the foreword, it was truly the honor of my life. I just couldn't believe it, and I kind of still can't. Lori can't be here today. She passed away right before the publication of the book. Various, of course, members of her family, her parents, her nieces and nephews are here, her brother, David. So, Stanley, do you want to take it away? Do you want to talk about Lori at first?
Lori.
Talk to your mic.
Yes.
Lori was my oldest daughter. Difficult to have a child die before your own self. I just became 90, and she was in her late 70s. 60s. And it's still difficult to accept the death of a child that's been with us for 67 years. And so it's hard. Sometimes I become emotional. I have not gotten over her death, but her book is so important and so evident of what Zabars went through, similar to my grandparents being killed by the Russian Cossacks, and how my father, the book tells how my father and mother escaped this called Ostropol in the about 120 miles away from the Kiev, and so it became a very local type of situation. Here we're talking about the growth and the escape of my parents from these terrorists in Russia, and it's happening again for the people of their area, their towns, their situation. So it's something that is current there. In addition, she put in 10 important recipes, so the book does not go into your library, it goes into your kitchen, because the recipes are excellent. And I'd like to introduce you to my wife and the mother of the author, and we've been married a little over 70 years, and I still find her youthful and smart and great. She had the Phi Beta Kappa, and people thought it was me. It was her.
And she's cute as hell. And we went to the same high school, so we are like sisters, me and Judy. But Judy, this is the first time I've had a chance to have you on a panel. So this is the first time I've had the chance to interview you on a panel.
Oh.
And I'm curious, were you interested in food before you married into the family?
No. No, not really. But I think we were married, in terms of food, we were married just about the time, we were married in, it's okay?
You need to put it, Judy.
We were married in 52. I'm talking, do you hear? We were married in 52, which was when everyone was beginning to travel in Europe and eat all kinds of ethnic food, and the Life cookbooks came out. And then I and the rest of my contemporaries began to explore and cook at home Italian food and French food and all of these things. From the Life had a cookbook like every month of a different country. Also, my mother-in-law, Stanley's mother, and grandma, my mother was born here in New York, but my mother-in-law, Lily, made all the Jewish food that my mother never made. And she made stuffed cabbage, and she made gefilte fish, and she once for one of the recipes of one of Lori's, one of the schools, I asked her for her gefilte fish recipe, and she says, you add a glass of water, 1 glass of water like this. So 3 glasses of water went in, to the recipe. And so, I mean, that's in terms of the food. But I wanted to talk a little about the book and the research, because Lori was a researcher. She had a degree in historic preservation. She had a law degree, and she worked at the Metropolitan Museum in the Decorative Arts Department. And she was always researching things. And like in junior high, she wrote 5 pages instead of 2. But the interesting part of the research that I think you will read in the book is that I once went to a lecture where on biographers, and they said you can work 8 to 9 years on a biography, and suddenly you find one piece of information that is the key to everything. And the key that Lori found was somehow there were relatives of the Zabar family that she found that had immigrated to Canada, and she was in correspondence with them. And some other family was doing research and somehow heard the name Zabar. And in doing his research, this is in the book, he found a letter in Yiddish written by Louis Zabar, Lori's grandfather and Stanley's father, and it may have been given to Yivo. It may have been given to whoever was interviewing the immigrants. And in this document in Yiddish that she had translated, that this unknown person sent to her, he described, which you will read in the book in detail, everything that happened during the pogrom, and to his family, and to his mother, and the escape, and everything, which never would have been known if this person hadn't sent her this document. So that's the kind of research that went into this book.
Yeah, I think that was a great decision. Not to just do a cookbook, because I think if it were more of a cookbook, people might skip over the introduction, thinking that that's not the important part, but it is very much the important part.
Yeah,
I really
recipes are
recommend
gettable.
reading
it.
it.
This is a book about immigration and the family and the history of the store. The recipes are like stuck in the end of the chapter.
Yes. Well, let's go to Henry, because I don't know if everyone was as obsessed with what it's like to grow up as a Zabar as I was, whether you could have whatever you wanted in the store, and if you could work there. So tell us about your Zabar's journey.
Oh, well, so my mother was the writer of the book, and, growing up around the store, I certainly was exposed to a lot of aspects of the store. But definitely one of my favorite parts was definitely going on trips or shopping trips with my mother as a kid. As early as 3 or 4 years old, she would drag me along and say, we're making a pit stop, and, we have to pick up a few things. And it's just that was sort of the norm, and it was also kind of fun too that the people that work there, that still work there today, would sort of babysit me a little bit. Not really literally babysit me, but if my mother's going shopping, I kind of would talk to them or hang out with them, and they would give me samples that they would give for other people. But they, like one of my favorite parts is definitely the smoked salmon. And, I would just hang out with the smoked salmon cutters, and they would give me some pieces to, hold me over as my mother was busy shopping. And it was just sort of just the norm for me. But definitely was an experience that still sticks with me today. I do my one-stop shopping as well there as much as I can. But yeah, no, I mean,
You worked there, didn't you?
and I did work there a couple times. There was, I think the first time I was 15 years old, and you weren't allowed to cut anything yet at that point. You can't use any knives. So I sold knishes and strudel, which, worked out very well. But also you sort of learn that there are different customers that want special things. So I didn't know any better. I was 15 years old, and this woman wanted just one Blintzen. And I said, well, there's a weight minimum. And she's like, but I'm the customer that comes every day. Why should I have a weight minimum? So, you sort of learn that aspect while you're there. And then I also have worked in the mail order department and working with customers online, which I have to say taught me a lot of how to work with customer service, which I do today. I actually work for the Center for Jewish History, and I'm an assistant manager in visitor services. And I truly believe that my first experience at Zabars in some way prepared me for that, and that how to work with the public, on how to talk to anyone that comes by with any concern or question or issue or difficulty.
And was it partly your mom's research and that kind of dedication to Jewish history that maybe led you to the museum?
Oh, well, yeah, no, I mean, she did actually some of her research for this book at the Center for Jewish History. There's a fantastic library. Maybe some of you have heard of it, but it's one of the not to plug my own job at the Heritage Museum, but, it is considered the second greatest database for Jewish history outside of Israel. And so my mother did collect a lot of information there. There's also the Hayas records. I don't know if you know what that is, and that I believe that my great-grandmother, Lillian Zabar, also, her record was in there as her boat manifest coming across from Europe to here in 1921. So that was a great resource for my mother to find more history about her own family and about us. So yeah, there's definitely a connection there, and I feel a little more connected to my own Jewish history because of my mother and also my family and what our history is and how it really connects to especially immigration and people coming into the country today from the Ukraine, and especially the Ukraine. That's a whole other facet that is definitely, I feel, more connected to more than ever these days because of my mother's book and just our own family history.
And I think the town of Ostropol, many, many American Jews, at least in this part of the world, there were many people from there.
Oh, absolutely. Or just the Pale in general.
Pale.
The president at my job, actually, his family comes from the same place. So a lot of connections there. And I think a lot of New York Jews can relate to that aspect. And Zabars can connect them to that in terms of food culture and just family history as well, and what they make for holidays and what they buy for holidays from Zabars.
So actually, yeah, I have a question that I hadn't thought of before. I think when I was growing up on the Upper West Side, Jewish food felt like a very monolithic Eastern European, Ashkenazic phenomenon. I think the only thing I ever thought of as, more Mizrahi would have been like halva. Was there an effort at any point there where you guys leaned more toward including more Sephardic foods? Or was my experience of Zabars is more that it was, you were generally trying to be more universal, like you sold ham, you sold shrimp, like, can we talk about some of those food decisions? David? And then Stanley.
Well, I have to say, and I think every family member learned from reading the book that they didn't know, and the decisions in the store, we opened in 34 on Broadway, and over the next 20 years, instead of an appetizing store, which meant smoked fish and dairy, it became more of a delicatessen appetizing and included other meats and non-kosher. And how that evolved is in the book, and not that I remember exactly how it started.
So you mean it was to serve the neighborhood, not just the Jewish
The
community?
neighborhood, my grandfather, I believe, in Brooklyn started in produce, and then he went into smoked fish. And when he came to New York, he had the smoked fish counter at a location on the same block. And various people had concessions. There was the dairy concession, the fruit concession, the smoked fish concession.
So it was different
So he had
vendors
he had
in
one
the same
counter.
building.
And so he specialized in the smoked fish, and then that expanded into deli. And later on, when it became his store, then there was deli and dairy and everything else.
And Stanley, did you want to talk about Sephardic food, or I was also thinking about the coffee program?
My brother and I took a trip in the early 60s, I think it was, to California, and we saw them roasting coffee there, and we determined that we could do it better, and that we could create a coffee. At that time, high-end coffee was not a universal desire, and we figured we could make it better, and my brother decided he wanted to make the type of coffee that as if you were creating a fine wine. And during the past 20 years, he has been governing the coffee operation, in which he would buy the green beans. We would take them and have a roaster in a little minor roaster, take 4 or 5 pounds of the green beans and test the product to make sure that we want to buy 300 bags of 300 pound, 100 pounds each to keep in storage because we knew we could make a better cup of coffee. And that's what we do today. And so we, in this medium-sized store, sell, roast and sell over 8,000 pounds of coffee a week. And he has a video that says, if you want it just fresh out of the smokers, you can come in every Tuesday. That's when we get we bring our shipments in of what we've smoked, roasted and smoked that day. So we keep everything fresh and attempt to give a high quality product, and we have customers that when they leave New York, we are their connection with the New York life.
Yeah, I remember, well, I think when I was young, I think the coffee section was closer to the door because I remember you could smell the coffee on the street. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was like a magnet. It was brilliant. Good marketing tip.
I have a comment on coffee because when I was Henry's age back there, 15 or 16, and we lived in Queens at the time, but I would come in with my father on a Sunday morning when he opened the store, and my job was scooping coffee beans and selling coffee cake. We had put in a Russian coffee cake. And later on in the 70s, and Saul was already overseeing roasting coffee, he brought in specialty coffees, Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, Hawaiian Kona coffee, and our customers were willing to try it, but instead of $6 a pound, they were paying $8 a pound for Jamaican Blue Mountain, which now you can buy for $50 a pound. It's sort of been priced out of, we've been priced out of it. A lot of people fell in love with it, but we go on to find new things, and we think we make a very good cup of coffee at a reasonable price. But it's always been an important part of Zabar's.
Maybe tell the audience sort of what, I don't know how to describe what you do at Zabars, so.
What I do at Zabar's?
Well, yeah.
I do a little of everything. I was a smoked fish buyer for about 10 years. I had apprenticed with Saul for a few months, and then he said, okay, it's your job now.
Well, explain who Saul is.
Saul, Stanley's brother, who's 94, and Saul and his wife Carole weren't able to make it today. He's been on a number of these book panels before. And Saul oversaw the coffee, and he was always in charge of the smoked fish, and he was always in charge of tinkering with the lights and the coffee grinders and the air conditioning and all those things. So that was Saul. And now I still oversee those things, do a lot more work in the office.
I remember Saul is going on 95, and he comes in almost every day, 4 or 5 hours. He sees what they're doing with the coffee, and he checks out his smoked fish and the caviars that come, and the sturgeon, and make sure that they're following his line of quality there. So he's there, and David is looking over his shoulder, and I come in to see that they don't go bankrupt, and so.
Here we go.
So David, could you slice the Nova if you had to? Like if the whole staff came down with, food poisoning, not that would ever happen.
So my routine in the 80s is Sunday and Monday I would be on the counter helping customers, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I'd be in Brooklyn or Queens in the smokehouses, because the smokers allowed us to come in and look at what they were producing, because of the nature of smoked fish, it being delicate and also a little temperamental. You didn't want to receive it in the store and then send it back. They'd rather have us see it, accept it, and then ship it the next day.
So what were you looking for? Smell, eyes, taste, everything?
Not too salty, it should be fatty, it should be delicious. And one of the, to tell a story, back in the day, sturgeon was wild sturgeon from Canadian lakes, etc. But the nature of sturgeon that it feeds on the bottom, that it would pick up a number of off flavors. And tasting sturgeon was one of those jobs that you really didn't want to do, but you had to do in the smokehouse before you sent it into the store.
And why didn't you want to?
Because you kept hitting flavors you didn't like.
It's
And it was-
freshwater, right?
It was freshwater lake,
Right.
but, I just want to say something about retail. I have 4 children, and my niece and my nephews have all worked, whether in high school or afterwards at Zabars. And I think being in the retail business, you learn a lot about working with people. You also learn if you don't want to be in that business. And my mother's family had a candy store on the east side, so she wasn't surprised what it took to be in the retail business.
No, I just said don't go into the retail.
She said to me, why do you want to do this? She actually said to me when I was in my 20s, why would you want to come into this store? And my oldest son said, this is not for me. And he went to medical school, and we're okay with that.
That's big of you. Yeah, I mean, that's a
Say
generation.
something about there is no glass ceiling for women at Zabars, that our CFO has been with us for how many years, Pat?
About 30.
She just runs everything from the office. She came as a high school girl. I think she went to night school while she was with us, and recently retired. This is Pat in the office, Pat Morrell, and she just runs everything. And the other woman with one of the
It's
biggest
Olga.
manager was Olga, who ran the cheese department. And Olga came as a teenager. They came as cashiers or clerks.
She
and they-
came in when she was 17, and she retired when she was
67.
67.
Not only did she
This
run
year.
the cheese department, we would go with her to food shows, to Anuga in Germany and to Ciel in Paris, and we would meet all the cheese suppliers. And, we went with her to Spain, I remember. At any rate, we would go to Europe, and she is the one that brought in all of the cheeses. And the amazing thing is that what was there? It was one 4-star restaurant in Paris we were eating in like 7 or 8 years ago. And my name escapes me. And the maitre d' came over and said, I just love your cheese department. And I said, you love our cheese department? And we're in the middle of Paris. He said, yes, our cheese is wonderful, but we have only French cheese. We don't have a selection of the Italian and the Spanish, and that's why I love to go there.
We have over 600 different cheeses at Zabars.
It was Taiwan, by the way. It was a maitre d' at Taiwan. So he liked our cheese department. Oh, yes, and the manager of the cashiers is also a woman who has been there for, Millie, who has been there for years and years. So that women are always promoted in Zabars. There really is, we're really up there with the times.
Right. But not so much the women in the family. Is that why you wanted to say that? Because the women of the family are not at
The
at
women
work
are
there.
behind the scenes.
Okay, that's good. So I'm curious, I guess, about 2 things about the future of Zabars. I guess one would be online retail, which of course is expanding massively, and then, maximizing your social media presence. So those, I don't know if anyone wants to talk about those. David, what about retail? What about the
Well, I'll start with
Online marketing.
social media. My son Willie, who was originally scheduled to be here, had a show at Stand New York, which I left to
He's
come
a
here.
comedian.
You just have to say that our media person is a stand-up comedian also. Really.
But he works 2 or 3 days a week doing our social media. And he's also a comedian. And the show is sponsored by Old Jewish Men. And it's an internet thing. And he's helping to run it. So I said, you stay here, and I'll come downtown. But he does a social media. And our mail order, our catalog has grown. Stanley was very instrumental in getting that going, our online presence over the last 20 years. And during the pandemic is one of the things that really helped us, that the store business may have been down 40, 50%, and catalog was up, well, almost 100%. But there were times that you couldn't ship enough, you didn't have enough personnel, social distancing, et cetera. And I think it was true for a lot of businesses that you couldn't ship the same or next day. It was 2, 3 days later, 4 days later. But that's important to our business, and also running a retail takes a lot of expenses and work, and having the catalog part.
David, tell them about the mezzanine, which is something
We have a unique housewares mezzanine upstairs at Zabars. I think a lot of customers don't know about it. And we have a lot of small appliances and gadgets that you don't find elsewhere.
It's a great place for Hanukkah shopping. I will say that.
Shopping, it's less big ticket items and things that you could find online, and more of things you don't expect. We have very big baking supply, so you find what you need in our housewares mezzanine.
Now, we're talking about one store that has one of the highest per square foot sales in I don't want to say in the United States, but in a large group of places that we open from 8 a.m. to 7:30, and from 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we're a place that tries to treat the customer as the most important part of our operation. And so that somehow has gotten across to the people who know us and want to support us and want to be part of a food product at a reasonable price.
As I remember it, I remember going to Zabars after the movies when I was young. I feel like it used to be a busy late night spot.
Saturday and Sunday,
Yeah.
and all the show people and the actors would come in, and Zero Mostel would come in and carry on after his show and put on another act in front of the. It was the place to go. Like after the movies, there were. At that time on the West Side, there were 3 or 4 movies within 10 blocks, 3 or 4 movie houses.
So we hope to carry on beyond our lifetime. As I said, I'm over 90, and Saul's over 94, and David's getting in there. But he's aging up too, and it is a technical operation that is not really simple. The many aspects of it that have to, and in this day and time where people come in for non-buying but taking products, as you could hear about, many of the drugstores have put in the locks on their merchandise because it is subject to pilferage and so on. So there are a lot of troubles that have to be dealt with. It's not a simple operation for what we have. And the only thing that makes it pleasant is that we like the product, we like the customers, and we like the ability to be active in new things, and basically it's a family group. They always knew where I was, where my brother was, and we all, our basic family lived within 10 blocks of each other, north, east, and west. So even my younger brother, who I consider a genius, he has his store. Eli has stores on the east side, and it's still within 10 blocks radius of the family.
I just want to say we have 7 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. 7 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and we really don't know who's going to get involved, but Henry's sister, Daisy is not with David, with Zabars at the moment, but she is the CEO of all the Mamafuko restaurants, and she's only in her 30s, and she just gravitated to some food-related industry. And there are 7 boys floating around, and any of them.
I'm just floating around.
Sooner or later, they may all end up there.
Well, they're floating around. 2 of them have been to Columbia Business School, and 2 are working in the store at this time. And one of them is working for Walmart e-commerce, and they're picking up skills and doing different things.
Did they try to give you advice?
Yes, all the time. They tell us how we could be better and more efficient, and we say, okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. But I must say, Lori and her husband Mark and Marguerite and Henry, they were the more adventurous contemporary food people, and they would go to Flushing and they go all over the city to try different restaurants and foods, and and also my sister Sandy, one of her sons, graduated from Cornell in the hotel program. So hospitality. So there's a lot of.
He's in the food too.
So there's a lot of talent in the family
He's
that's
working,
developing. We'll see what happens.
He may come back. Sandy's son is working for a company that runs Popeye and Burger King. And his job was to sell 5,000 frozen turkeys on mail order from Popeyes. I mean, I never thought of buying turkey from Popeye. But anyway, they're all somehow involved, and we'll see what happens.
So, neighborhood was very excited this week. I believe some signage went up on 82nd and Broadway.
Dave, you want to tell them what they're going to do there?
So there was a vacant storefront on 82nd and Broadway. It had been Leighton's Linens, which was a long-time local business. And
They wanted to retire.
And so we're on Wednesday, we're going to open it really as Zabar kind of gift display. I forget what we called it, but we're going to have
like a pop-up store?
Like a pop-up, gift baskets and merchandise that you could see, and try to make it a little bit exciting and make it easier to order online or with your phone. But we got all this mail order gift stuff together where you have more of an opportunity to see it and handle it, and also make it a little bit of an event space.
Today, about 25% of our business comes from mail order. Many people who have left New York, they want the taste of New York again. So if you just look at Zabars.com, you'll get an idea of, and all the products that we sell in mail order really come from the store itself. We don't have outside products coming as a outside type of business, but we have our food products and our products that we sell in Zabar with the ability to wherever you go in the United States, we can ship it to you and feel that you are still back home in New York.
So it
in
sounds
fact,
like
we own the statement, New York is Zabars, Zabars is New York, and which is true.
And so it sounds like you're working on making it more of a national brand.
Well,
not that it's not, but that you are working on having the reach of Zabars be far beyond New York.
Right. That's at 25% of our business. And at one time, a group of restaurants wanted to open in Las Vegas and with the name Zabas, which in the rest of the country is pronounced Zabars. And so we had to fight that, because if they were able to do it, we could not then name new products that we had Zabar, because we would be in competition with them in a sense. And so they went ahead and hired a firm that can tell you how many people in the United States have ever heard of the particular name. And so they determined on their dime that 13% of the, that was 10 years ago, 13% of the United States people indicated they heard the name somewhere, the name Zabars, and 11% creates they're famous. So we won the case that we were not subject to this type of problem.
And also, many of you know, we've appeared in various movies and TV programs. Even the latest Ghostbusters, which was filmed in Canada, they asked us for some Zabar's product to put in what was supposed to be a New York office. So they had a shopping bag or a coffee. And it helps to set the scene as being in New York City. And most famously, Nora Ephron did a scene for You've Got Mail in Zabars with Tom Hanks. And
So, who has seen You've Got Mail?
That's good.
Anyone has seen
Well, it must
the
be,
movie?
20 years old by now?
But they keep replaying it.
Wait, sorry. I think we're gonna take questions in a minute, or is there anything else?
Whatever.
No?
Questions?
Please, and then I'll have you raise your hands. But go ahead.
I used to work in Edgewater, right next to the Maxwell House coffee plant there, and it's closed now, but the beautiful smell is all day long when they're roasting coffee there. But if you're selling 8,000 pounds of coffee a week, you must be roasting it somewhere because you don't smell it anywhere.
No.
In Brooklyn, there was roasters in Brooklyn available for us to add 8,000 pounds to them under our responsibilities to determine how we want to roast it, how we want it to be. We want it to be like a fine wine, the taste of it not burnt like most coffees are, because if you want to do a fine line, you have a great chance of burning the coffee. That then you have to either dispose of it one way or another, or be able to turn it into French Italian, a heavy roast. But our basic coffees are very limited in how we've got to watch how it's to be roasted there.
But it's interesting because now Brooklyn has many new roasteries. 50 years later, it's come full circle, and there are national brands like Blue Bottle and local roasters that are roasting coffee in Brooklyn again, which probably wasn't happening except for a very few.
That's right. Well, our biggest roaster was in the American Can Company building. I'm talking about 30 years ago, which is now converted to condominiums. So,
And where was that?
that was
Long Island City?
no, it was in Brooklyn, Smith Street and 3rd or somewhere out that way. So yes, so we have a roaster, and they only roast 200 or 300 pounds, per batch, and so they roast our 8,000 pounds of coffee, at the beginning of the week and send it to us. But I could smell the coffee from the General Foods plant because when I was in Riverside Drive for 25 years, and every couple of months it would come right across the river, and you could smell the coffee roasting.
You had a question?
Can you talk about the collaboration with Coach?
I think you might need to speak up.
Can you speak about the collaboration with Coach? They had a whole thing with Zabar, 2 things that sold out immediately for $500 a piece.
I can't hear.
The sneakers that.
The Coach.
The collaboration with Coach.
Oh, that
sweater.
Willie was involved with that.
Well, Willie did publicity. I think they contacted Scott, our general manager, and it takes over a period of time the collaboration, but.
They had a shirt. I mean, prices that we would not sell in the store.
We didn't sell it in the
We
store,
didn't
but they
sell
sold
it. Coach merchandised it. I don't know what the arrangement was made.
Was any of the family
They
involved in
sold
the
out.
design
They
of the
sold
product?
everything that they made. They sold it, and the people wanted more. So.
I think we represent New York City to a lot of people, and that's part of it.
Well, the Japanese come and they buy a huge number of our printed products, take it back to Japan, That's
It
something.
shows they were in New York.
What's the name, do you know the name of the font? Or who designed the bag, the logo?
Who
It's such a,
designed it
yeah, it's so
originally?
iconic.
Like
When
20
was that
years
from?
ago. Schneider, what was his first name?
Elliot Schneider.
Elliot Schneider. Saul got him, it must over 20 years ago,
Here
designed.
is a unique bag that we now only sell. We sell this bag for 15 cents. Costs us about 45, and we sell the larger bag, where it's a larger, for a quarter. That costs about 65. Why do we do that? Because we don't use paper for packing a customer's product. Either they are willing to bring in their own bag, or they pay 15 cents for a bag that takes it. And the benefit of it is not only that for us, the Zabar is throughout the world, as you see it, but it's waterproof, strong, and it's great for a gift there. And you've been somewhere that has value there. So that's it. And so I use it as a case.
Well, that replaced the plastic, one's plastic.
Well, the plastic ones that people then would use for garbage, whereas this, you come back, you can use this again and again, or use it for taking things or giving gifts. You give gifts, whatever.
And that's because you have to charge for bags now.
So
It's a New York City ordinance.
So
Yes.
So
everybody.
one time I went to my wife and says, there's a lot of pilferage as a result of that. You can't really
Stanley,
tell.
could you use your microphone? I'm sorry.
Oh. There's a lot of pilferage as a result of that. She says, don't worry, the publicity, she's a good...
Free publicity, definitely.
We also found that to use it like a double paper shopping bag, it costs more than certainly the plastic handle bags we used to have. That it was less expensive for us to only charge half what it costs us for these bags than to do the paper shopping bags.
No, sorry, let's let someone else ask a question.
Did you ever consider expansion into greater New York areas as generations move out of Manhattan or New York boroughs and know the brand, know the store? And then, Fairway did that under different circumstances. The family sold out and had financial problems and it didn't work. But in terms of what Zabar has built,
Not as Zabars itself there, as Zabars as it is, as you see it today. Was too delicate and logical. Otherwise, it would be just a business program running a food market, which is not this fresh food product. You need top people, people who are committed to the customer and food, and the operation. This is a different type of. It isn't a supermarket. It isn't a delicatessen. It's a unique operation of you have to love what you're doing and have to enjoy the customers, and they are your neighbors, most of our family who's operating it. As David is 7 blocks away and I'm around the corner, and we're close. It's part of family and part of group. It's a unique operation. People have tried it, but it has not worked. Other people tried
The
this.
Fairway expansion did not turn out well, but that's for very complicated reasons, I think.
We're getting pretty good at shipping our key products that people want, even if it's chicken soup and matzo balls. But, it's babka and smoked salmon and bagels, and it's gotten easier and easier to send things than to open a retail operation.
Yeah, like Goldbelly is so enormously successful. I know they have Russ and Daughters, but for a long time you guys didn't ship the fresh food, right? It was more just the prepared foods than the cream cheese packs, but not soup. So that's a good new thing. Questions? We have just like a few more minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever thought about doing a book of what Zabars means to me? Because I'm like overflowing with 12 stories I want to tell you.
Well, maybe that would be the next book.
What
My
Zabars means to
94-year-old
me,
aunt just called a minute
about the
ago,
public.
and
Writing
she didn't grow up in New York, but came here 70 years ago, I guess. But anyway, I bring her groceries sometimes, especially during COVID, and she always calls me and thanks me. She doesn't let me in. She calls me and thanks me. And then one time she called and after this elaborate thank yous, darling, thank you, darling, she goes, but the halva, why didn't you go to Zabar's?
She said.
Yes, I mean, it's. I think it's bittersweet. Maybe a lot of people in this room feel that you know that there were so many Zabars, right? There was never a place that is quite like it, but it's part of why Zabars has become such an icon. I think for Jewish Americans is because there are so few places like that left. So it's a very important tradition. I think to a lot of people, I think that's what you're saying. But I would also say there's an interesting, I mean, Henry, maybe you can speak to this as a younger member of the generation, is that the interest in Israeli food and the synthesis of Ashkenazi and Sephardi and Mizrahi foods in the United States, in Israel, it's been a really interesting thing to watch.
Well, I think especially since I feel like the Jewish deli culture kind of faded away for a bit and now has sort of had a bit of a revival. I remember there was an article recently that said that the hot girl hangout is the Jewish deli now. So right, they all go to, Katz or something on a weekend to hang out. I know. I said that to my CEO and president. They thought it was wonderful. But, that's sort of like this revival of this interest in deli culture, I think, may play into Zabars as well, to the extent that these are foods that you don't normally get on a regular basis. You don't go home, especially it's very New York Jewish food, in that, you go home maybe to Ohio or to California where you grew up for for holidays, and you don't have that kind of food there, and you may bring it back to your family or you may introduce them. It's just that sort of unique thing that I think that you don't get otherwise, and I think that is an important factor into it, regardless what age you are at this point. That's all I'll say.
I don't think you can really claim it's Jewish food.
Absolutely, you can't.
It's a food of all types, primarily
Under one roof.
Under one roof there, and so, for example, we've structured the operation so we have every item you need to have dinner. So you don't have to go elsewhere. We have the fruit and vegetables and the unique products and the things that you would want to, and things that were new or interesting and so on. So it's a different thing. Now, whether we can continue on, I'm not sure, because almost a third of our personnel have been with us for 30 years. It's, a number of them are starting to retire, those that are experts. So we have to retrain. We have to have people who, family if possible, who have the interest, the excitement of being part of this close family matter that wants to take care of the customer in a unique way, and the customer is king, which is rare in today's situation. So, and we don't know. we're trying. We think it's exciting, but not everyone thinks hard work is exciting. So,
Well, I think you would probably have a lot of applications for some of the jobs. But, okay, one more question. You've had your hand up.
As a soon-to-be New Yorker and looking for things to do in New York, do you offer cooking demonstrations on how to slice smoked salmon, a cheese workshop? Do you source them out to other places? Since you're the premier experts on
I don't think we're capable of doing that because of we're limited. Have you been recently in Zabars?
not recently, but my children have.
It's crowded. It's crowded.
But you have this event space. But the new event space.
Oh, the new,
We have events
gift showroom,
from
yes.
time to time there, but it's crowded. You know that there's always a limitation lately of excess personnel. It's tough times since this pandemic happened, and personnel have to be trained in a different way. It's difficult today. It's different than it was 20 years ago. I think.
But it's a good idea.
It is. And the crowdedness, I think the crowdedness is part of what people love about Zabars. And we can end with what Murray Klein said, right, about if he could see his feet, he knew that Zabars wasn't crowded enough. Thank you all so much.